Hello everyone. Subscribe to the channel to get more videos. Also, let us know in the comments what city you are watching from. Now let's begin this one. When Dana asked for space, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of quiet that settles deep and stays there. We had just finished dinner, leftover meatloaf, nothing fancy. I was drying the dishes while she wiped down the counters, and she said it like she was asking me to pass the salt. I think I need a little space. That was it. No build-up. No explanation. She didn't even look at me. Just kept scrubbing at the same spot on the counter like it owed her something. My name is Liam. I'm 68 years old, and I live in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I was a firefighter for 32 years before I retired, and one thing that job teaches you is how to spot trouble before it bursts into flames. The look on Dana's face? That was trouble. She left the kitchen like she'd just made a comment about the weather. I stood there holding a chipped mug with a sloppy little rainbow painted across it, the one our grandson Evan made in kindergarten. I just stared at it, trying to process what the hell had just happened. 38 years together, and now she wants space? I didn't say anything. Didn't ask questions. I just dried that mug and put it back on the shelf like it was any other night. But my brain wasn't calm. It was cataloging. I used to carry a little notebook on the job, black leather, worn around the edges, where I jotted down notes about sketchy wiring, unmarked hazards, vendors who always overcharged. I hadn't touched that notebook in years. But that night, I found it buried in the junk drawer under a pile of expired coupons and old batteries. Page 1, dated that night. Read. Dana asked for space. Didn't look up. No eye contact. Didn't wait for a reply. That was how I coped. I didn't yell or cry. I wrote. Later, I found her in bed already, scrolled up in the glow of her phone, probably reading another one of those self-help articles with titles like Finding Yourself After 50. She didn't say goodnight. Didn't even flinch when I walked in. I lay there beside her, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us. I'd spent decades walking into burning buildings, but nothing felt quite as cold as the woman I'd shared a life with suddenly pulling away without a fight. I didn't ask what she meant by space. I already knew. I'd seen it in others, the slow withdrawal, the vague detachment, the careful phrasing. I'd seen it in the faces of homeowners whose kitchens were already half gone in a grease fire the moment they realized the damage wasn't an accident. Someone left the burner on and walked away. Dana wasn't asking for space. She was staging her exit. I didn't protest. I planned. That night, while she turned over and put her back to me, I lay there awake for hours, forming a plan. Not to save the marriage. No, not that. I'd already seen too many fires to think this one could be put out. This wasn't a time for hope. It was a time for preparation. It started with a safe deposit box. I drove out to a small bank about 20 miles from town, not the one we'd used for years, not where Dana might ever walk in on a whim. I signed the lease under my full name, but used a P.O. box I'd quietly set up 2 weeks prior. The woman behind the counter smiled like I was just another old guy handling his affairs. I smiled back. She had no idea she was watching the beginning of a slow, silent disappearance. That was the thing. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anyway, what I wanted was distance. Insurance. Options. I'd spent my whole life being dependable, the guy people called when things got scary. Now, I needed to be the one quietly pulling the alarm. I didn't change the locks. That's what someone does when they want to make a statement. I didn't want a statement. I wanted a clean break. So I changed access. I opened a separate bank account at that same small-town branch, one only I could touch. I moved over small amounts at first, just enough that they didn't raise flags. By the time Dana would have noticed, it would have been too late to stop the drift. At home, I started moving things out, nothing noticeable. Just my tools. A couple shirts. One of the pictures from the hallway, the one of me and Evan at the lake, fishing poles in hand. Dana didn't comment. Maybe she thought I was reorganizing the shed or decluttering like she always asked. She had her own distractions. Suddenly, she was going to yoga twice a week. Not at the community center like before, this new place downtown with big windows and exposed brick walls. She came back humming under her breath, like she'd discovered some new inner peace. She started playing these podcasts on the kitchen speaker, soft voices preaching self-love and rediscovery while I sipped my morning coffee in silence. Her phone was never far from her hand now. She'd sit on the couch beside me and scroll, not saying a word. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse, those pastel backgrounds with bold fonts. Quotes like, "Let go of what weighs you down," or "Sometimes growth requires separation." I stopped asking who she was texting. Instead, I focused on the checklist. The old notebook came back into play. Every page had a title. Legal, copies of our marriage license, her social security number, retirement account info. Financial, the mortgage details, passwords to old accounts, our joint tax records. Logistics, which boxes I'd packed already, which tools I'd moved into the storage unit, which utilities were still in her name. Every night, while Dana scrolled and sipped her tea, I updated the notebook like I was logging a house fire still in progress. I wasn't leaving yet, but I was already gone. Only one person knew the truth. Meredith. I took her out to lunch one Saturday, just me and her, like we used to do when she was little. We sat at this quiet diner outside of Hot Springs, one of those places with faded booths and too much pie on display. She watched me closely the moment I sat down. "What's going on?" she asked, before the waitress even filled our water glasses. I told her everything. Not dramatically, just the facts. Dana had asked for space. I was giving it to her. Permanently. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She nodded. "She doesn't know what she's walking away from," she said. Then she slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a listing for a furnished lakefront rental, 3 states away, quiet town, month-to-month lease. I looked at her, eyebrows raised. "It's under your fishing alias," she said with a small smile. "The one you used on Facebook to follow boat auctions." That was when I realized Meredith had already known. She'd seen it coming too. The next day, I signed the lease. No questions. I set up mail forwarding to the P.O. box. Arranged a quiet moving service. A guy who specialized in divorce downsizes and estate cleanouts. Cash only. No paper trail. I moved slowly, deliberately. Like backing a fire truck out of a tight alley. No sirens, just measured steps. Each time Dana went out, yoga, brunch with some new clarity coach, a book club full of middle-aged women quoting Glennon Doyle, I packed one more thing. A set of old wrenches. The photo album from our Yellowstone trip in '95. My grandfather's watch. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just assumed I was brooding somewhere in the basement, licking my wounds. But I wasn't sulking. I was editing myself out of the frame. Quietly. Thoroughly. Surgically. No confrontation. No dramatic showdown. Just a man, erasing the evidence of a life he no longer belonged to. And Dana? She kept sipping her green smoothies, captioning selfies with #healing and #new energy. Never once asking where I was really going when I left the house at dawn. Never wondering why her old world was getting quieter, lighter, more hollow. By the time she finally noticed what was missing, she'd already be living in a house I no longer considered mine. 3 weeks after I moved the last of my things, Dana finally noticed the recliner was gone. She walked into the living room one afternoon while I was sitting at the table, reading the paper, and tilted her head like something about the space felt off. "Huh," she said. "Did you move your chair?" I didn't look up. Didn't seem like I needed it anymore. She paused, then gave a tight little laugh, the kind people use when they're not sure if they're being insulted. "Well, it does open things up. Looks more modern now." Then she walked away, humming again. Always humming now, like she was in the opening credits of a feel-good movie no one else was watching. I sipped my coffee. Page 5 of the notebook was labeled, "Dana notices recliner, treats it like decor." Noted. By then, I was living part-time at the lake house. Just me and a small bag of clothes, the notebook, and a cooler full of groceries. Meredith had stocked the fridge for me the first week. Even left a sticky note on the milk. "Don't forget to eat something green." The place was simple. 2 bedrooms, wide porch, a dock that creaked when the wind picked up. The water was cold and still. No traffic noise. No Wi-Fi strong enough to stream all those self-discovery podcasts Dana loved. I'd bring Evan there on the weekends. We'd fish. We'd eat ham sandwiches with too much mustard. We'd laugh at nothing. I'd put the phone on speaker and let him talk to his dinosaurs like they were passengers on a sinking ship. Dana never asked where I was. In fact, she barely spoke to me at all. She was busy, or so I gathered from her sudden obsession with growing. Her social media, once full of family pictures and awkward holiday candids, had transformed into a curated highlight reel of someone rediscovering their truth. Photos of her sipping wine in front of the fire pit. Quotes in flowy fonts about the freedom of letting go. One post read, "Sometimes you have to lose the version of yourself that loved too much." Below it, a selfie. Big sunglasses. Perfect lipstick. 1 glass of Merlot, barely touched. She looked like she was auditioning for a lifestyle blog that didn't know it had already been rejected. Eric, our son, texted me one night. Mom called asking where you were. I told her you said you needed a break too. That was all he said. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push. Eric had seen the cracks long before they split wide. He was like me in that way, quiet, deliberate, calm under pressure. Dana, meanwhile, doubled down on the illusion. She started hosting little wine nights in the backyard. I'd see her out there from the bedroom window, laughing too loudly with women I didn't recognize. They wore oversized scarves and brought bottles of organic red, each trying harder than the last to look unbothered by their own failing marriages. I wondered if any of them had husbands who were quietly packing up their lives while no one noticed. At the lake house, I made the next move. I drove into town and walked into the office of a man named Carl Denton. Small-time attorney. No nonsense. Type who probably used the same thermos every day for 20 years. I want to disentangle, I said. He didn't blink. Financial or marital? Start with financial, I replied. Marital will come next. He opened a drawer and pulled out a packet thick with forms. Most people don't think this far ahead. You strike me as a man who's had a plan for a while. I was a firefighter, I said. You learn to look for smoke. He nodded once, like that told him everything. We spent an hour going over the basics. I had everything he needed: account statements, pension breakdowns, mortgage records. I handed him a manila envelope with my name printed neatly across the front. Carl glanced through it, then gave a satisfied grunt. Clean, he said. Deliberate. This'll go fast. Back home, Dana didn't mention I was gone for half the day. She didn't ask why the coffee grinder was missing from the counter, or why the mug Evan painted had disappeared from the shelf. Maybe she thought I was finally accepting the space she'd asked for. Maybe she thought she still controlled the pace. That was her mistake. She assumed silence meant surrender. But the thing about silence? It's a strategy. It's a mask. It's what you wear when you're letting the other person talk themselves into a corner. She hadn't seen the new documents. She didn't know I'd removed her access from our joint accounts and shifted my pension into a protected trust. She was still scrolling, still captioning her detachment with elegant hashtags, thinking she was the one steering the ship. She didn't realize I was already gone. She hadn't been left behind. She'd just been ignored, methodically, efficiently, completely. By the time she figured it out, she'd be talking to my lawyer, not to me. And I'd be at the lake, listening to Evan explain the difference between a T-Rex and an Allosaurus, wondering why it took me so damn long to get out. It was a Tuesday when I made the final cut. I was sitting in Carl Denton's office again, the same quiet room with the ticking wall clock and the smell of old paperwork. He was flipping through the final version of the trust documents, his glasses low on his nose, nodding occasionally like a man reading a recipe he's made a dozen times. This'll do it, he said, scribbling a quick note on the signature line. She'll be legally removed from everything listed here. Your trust, your medical proxy, all financial fallback roles. He looked up. You sure you want to name Natalie? I nodded. She's the only one I trust to do what needs doing. Carl didn't argue. He just slid the papers across the desk and offered me a pen. Natalie, Meredith's wife, had always been polite but a little cool around Dana. Dana never made much of an effort with her. She always talked over her at dinners, never asked her anything about her work, and never once said her name without tacking on a vague adjective. That woman. Meredith's person. Never Natalie. But Natalie had shown me more respect in 2 years than Dana had in the last 10. She was steady, practical, the kind of woman who could handle a crisis without blinking. She was a nurse practitioner. She knew the difference between a paper cut and a hemorrhage, emotional ones included. I signed the papers without hesitation. Carl gave a small approving nod, then stood and reached for a worn envelope. You want me to mail a copy to her attorney? Not yet, I said. Let her notice the silence first. I left the office lighter. Not happy, not triumphant, just done. The kind of done that you don't announce. You just carry it in your chest like an exhale that's been waiting years to come out. Back home, Dana was hosting another wine night. I saw her from the driveway, 4 women in denim jackets and linen scarves, laughing like the world owed them nothing but clarity. A candle flickered on the patio table, half a cheese board was already gone, and someone had set up a speaker playing soft acoustic covers of 90s songs. It was the kind of gathering that used to annoy me, back when I still cared about being annoyed. Now, it just looked like a stage photo for a lifestyle blog no one read. As I stepped inside, I caught a few lines of her story, mid-laugh. "We're just in different phases," she was saying, waving her wine glass like a wand. "He's figuring himself out. I'm rediscovering who I really am. It's beautiful, really." Her friends all murmured support, nodding like synchronized swimmers. No one asked where I'd been that day. No one noticed the keys I no longer carried on my ring. No one asked why the file cabinet in the hallway was suddenly missing its top drawer. I walked past the back door, quiet as smoke, and went upstairs. I didn't stop in our bedroom. I went into what used to be Evan's sleepover room, just a twin bed and a dresser now, and shut the door behind me. That was where I kept the copies. The notebook. The flash drive. The new trust documents. That night, I called Meredith. "She's going to realize soon," I said. "You might get pulled into it." "I'm ready," she said. "So is Natalie." I chuckled. "She's always been ready." Meredith paused. "You sure you don't want to talk to her first? Before it all starts?" "No," I said. She asked for space. "I'm just giving her the full version." The next morning, I emailed Carl. Subject: finalize everything. Body: thanks for the work. You can send notice to Dana's counsel now. Let them know any inquiries moving forward should go through your office. No further personal contact will be made. Liam. I hit send and closed the laptop. Downstairs, Dana was already on the phone with someone, giggling. "I think we're just letting each other breathe, you know," she said. "It's mature." I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table while she talked about maturity like it was something she'd recently ordered online. She didn't know her name was gone from every emergency document. She didn't know her access to our accounts was now listed as revoked, per request of grantor. She didn't know that I hadn't just walked out emotionally, I'd cut the wires. The life she'd assumed would always be half hers was now behind fireproof glass. Dana believed this was an open-ended sabbatical. She thought I was a man who'd get lonely, who'd come back with a fresh appreciation for scented candles and communication exercises. But she had mistaken kindness for passivity, silence for indecision. She'd forgotten that I'd made a career out of running into flames while everyone else ran away. Now I was doing what I'd always done, securing the exits, checking the foundation. And this time, I wasn't going back in. It happened at a boutique, not a real store, the kind with sales and receipts. This was one of those places that smelled like eucalyptus and had no prices on anything. Dana loved it. She said it made her feel curated. She was buying a vase, a narrow, overpriced thing with a swirl down the center. She smiled at the cashier, slid our shared credit card across the counter like she always did, and waited. The woman ran it once. Then again. Her face changed. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "It's been declined." Dana blinked. "Try again." She did. Twice. Still declined. Dana forced a laugh. "I think there's a mistake. Can you check the chip?" "I can try a different terminal," the woman offered, trying to stay polite. Dana handed her the card again, slower this time. Declined. By the fourth try, the smile was gone. Dana pulled out her phone and opened the banking app. What she saw drained the color from her face. Every account with my name on it, gone. The savings? Zeroed out. The trust account? Locked. The emergency fund we'd kept since the '08 scare? Transferred. She called me. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. On the third call, a chime sounded. A new email had come in. It was from me. Subject: financial transition. Dana. Please route all inquiries through my legal counsel. Liam. That was all it said. No emotion. No explanation. Just a redirect. Like a company had changed phone numbers, and the old one no longer worked. Dana stood there, clutching her phone like it might bite her. The store clerk asked gently if she still wanted the vase. Dana left it on the counter. She drove home in silence. That night, she tried calling Eric. "Your dad isn't answering," she said. "Do you know what's going on?" He was quiet on the other end. Then, he said he needed space too. "Eric, come on. Don't be like this. I need to speak to him." There was a pause. A heavy, final kind of pause. "He asked not to be disturbed," Eric said. "And I'm respecting that." Click. She tried Meredith next. Straight to voicemail. Even Natalie, who Dana had never considered worth knowing, wouldn't answer. She posted a cryptic quote that night on social media. Sometimes people disappear when they've given you too many chances. It got 11 likes, but no comments. The next day, Dana sat on our back patio, still trying to breathe through the weight of her own confusion. Her wine glass was half full. The birds chirped like nothing had changed. But she knew something had. Something big. It wasn't a break. It wasn't a sulk. It was a severance. All those months of playing the part, the vague podcasts, the wine nights, the curated independence, none of it prepared her for this kind of silence. A silence that didn't feel like a pause. It felt like the end of a conversation she didn't realize had already happened. She picked up her phone again, scrolled through old photos. Family trips. Birthday dinners. Evan in my arms at the lake. All of it looked like a life she used to have. And that's when it sank in. She hadn't been left. She'd been removed. Efficiently. Quietly. Completely. Everything she thought she still controlled had already been reassigned. And not to her. To Meredith. To Natalie. To the people she never listened to. To the people who never stopped listening to me. That night, she poured another glass of wine and sat under the string lights on the patio, the ones I installed back in 2016 when she said she wanted more ambience. She sat there for hours, waiting for the phone to ring. It never did. It was Dana's mother. A stroke, sudden and severe. The kind of call that makes people forget whatever story they've been telling themselves. She got the news around 8 in the morning, hospital in Little Rock, ICU, family only. She threw on a coat over her pajamas, keys shaking in her hand as she ran out the door. No makeup, no curated energy, just panic. The first call she made was to me. It rang once, then again, then went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She tried again, and again. By the fourth time, her hands were trembling. The road blurred in front of her as she gripped the steering wheel and tried to stay under the speed limit. At the red light near the on-ramp, she called Eric. No answer. She called again. No answer. She called Meredith. Straight to voicemail. That was when the tears started. Not from grief. From disbelief. The silence was louder than anything she'd heard in months. She dialed Eric again. 7 calls total. On the 7th, someone picked up. Hello, she said, breathless. But it wasn't Eric. It was Natalie. Dana froze. Natalie? Where's Eric? Is he with you? There was a pause. No noise in the background. No chaos. Just calm, clinical quiet. Yes, Natalie said. He's with me. We're on our way to the hospital. Dana exhaled, half relief, half confusion. Okay, good. I need to speak to Liam. Please. This is an emergency. Natalie didn't raise her voice. Didn't rush. She said it like a nurse delivering bad news to a stranger's bedside. Liam asked not to be disturbed. What? Dana barked. No, this is different. My mother, she's in critical condition. I need him. I understand, Natalie replied. But his request hasn't changed. You can't be serious. I am. And then a click. Dana stared at the phone. She tried calling back. Blocked. At the hospital, she rushed through the front doors, wild-eyed, demanding to know where her mother was. The nurse pointed her toward the elevator. She didn't even hear the rest of the directions. When she stepped into the ICU waiting room, Eric was already there. Sitting in the corner, holding a styrofoam cup of bad coffee. Calm. Collected. Present. She ran to him. Why didn't you answer my calls? He looked up, expression unreadable. I was already here. She blinked. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't need to. Eric, her voice cracked. This is your grandmother. I thought we were. You asked for space, he said flatly. We respected it. She stared at him like he was speaking a different language. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. Tapped a few times. Held it out. Dad wanted me to play this for you. Dana took the phone with both hands. It was an audio message. Just a few seconds long. Liam's voice. Calm. Measured. Nothing theatrical. If she reaches out in crisis, stay steady. That's when they test the boundary. Hold the line. That was it. Just that. Dana's hand dropped. Eric took the phone back and tucked it away. No yelling. No scene. He stood and walked past her, heading toward the nurse's desk. Dana didn't follow. She sat down on one of the vinyl chairs, heart racing. It was happening. Fully now. No one doing it. She was on the outside. For real. And the worst part? She didn't know when that had changed. Because it didn't come with a slammed door or a screaming match. It came with silence. And silence never apologizes. She had spent the last year trying to perform strength. Trying to make everyone believe she was becoming freer, clearer, happier. But when life turned upside down, when real fear punched a hole in her world, She reached for the one person who had always shown up and found nothing. Not absence, not delay, just distance. The kind you don't come back from. That night, Dana sat beside her mother's bed, listening to the machines beep steadily, and realized that nobody was coming to sit beside her. Not her husband, not her son, not the version of her family she used to take for granted. She was still breathing, but the life she'd built? It wasn't. It arrived 4 days after the hospital. A plain manila envelope, thick and heavy, no return address. Just her name typed clean across the front in all caps. Dana Gallagher. She found it tucked into her mailbox between a grocery flyer and a donation appeal from the local shelter. It didn't look like much, but the weight of it felt wrong in her hands, like something sharp was waiting inside. She brought it to the kitchen, cleared a spot on the table, and slid a knife under the seal. The first thing she saw was the legal header. Formal notification of termination, financial and estate interests. Prepared by Carl Denton, ESQ. Pages and pages of cold language. You are hereby removed as beneficiary of. You are no longer designated next of kin for. Emergency contacts have been reassigned. She flipped faster, scanning, trying to make sense of it. Her name crossed out in section after section. All the familiar lines she once signed together with Liam gone. In their place, Meredith, Natalie, and in one section, just the word private, under a new trust title she didn't recognize. The foundation of her life, rewritten in quiet ink. There was no letter, no postscript, until the final page. Tucked behind the documents was a printed transcript, one single page, black text on white paper. Her own voice. A voicemail. Typed out word for word. Liam, I don't know what you're doing. You can't just ignore me like this. My mother is in the hospital and I'm the one dealing with everything while you. God, this is childish. You're being cruel. Please, just call me back. I need you. I still need. It stopped there. No ending. Just a final line, center-aligned, in plain bold font. Message saved but not answered. As requested, her hands began to shake. She pushed the transcript aside, and that's when it fell out. A photo. A 4x6 glossy print. Unframed. Liam and Evan, standing on the dock at the lake. Matching fishing rods in their hands. Laughing. The sky behind them painted in late afternoon gold. There was a yellow sticky note on the corner. Natalie's handwriting, clean and sharp. We'll keep him safe. Dana sat very still. She stared at the photo for a long time, then looked back at the transcript. The trust papers. Her own words, immortalized now as evidence. Not of guilt, just of irrelevance. She wasn't being punished. She was being removed. Not in anger. In clarity. It wasn't that Liam was trying to hurt her. It was that he no longer considered her a factor. She had stopped being part of the plan, and now she was simply being erased from the future. One signature at a time. She looked down at the sticky note again. We'll keep him safe. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of custody. Not of the child. Of the legacy. The part of Liam that used to belong to her, the house, the finances, the family story, was now sealed in a vault she no longer had keys to. Even Evan, who used to run up to her and yell, "Grandma," with sticky fingers and gap-toothed grins, now smiled only for pictures she wasn't in. She wasn't just forgotten. She was replaced. By better stewards. By people she once dismissed as accessories. By a nurse practitioner she never saw coming. Dana pushed the envelope away and stood at the kitchen sink, staring out into the backyard where the string lights still hung from that last wine night. The candles had all burned out. The cushions were wet from last night's rain. She thought about texting him. Something neutral. A sentence that didn't beg. But she didn't. Because she finally understood. The silence wasn't a pause. It was the new language. And Dana, the woman who once thought she controlled the script, was no longer even part of the story. The clock read 2:11 a.m. Dana lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above her. The sheets were twisted around her legs. Her phone sat on the pillow next to her like a brick she was too afraid to lift. She hadn't slept in 2 nights. Her thoughts looped like a broken reel. The photo of Liam and Evan, the sticky note from Natalie, the legal words still echoing through her head. Removed. Reassigned. No longer authorized. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was nausea. Dull and constant. And still, despite everything, she reached for the phone. She stared at Liam's name in her contacts. Still there. Still untouched. No emojis. No last-minute changes like she used to do when she was mad. Just Liam. She pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then, click. Someone picked up. Her breath caught in her throat. Liam, she said, voice hoarse. But it wasn't his voice that answered. It was a small one. Light. Curious. Hi, said Evan. This is Grandpa's phone. Dana blinked. Evan? Sweetheart, can I talk to him? There was a short pause. She could hear soft breathing on the other end. Then the sound of a blanket shifting. No, Evan said calmly. Grandpa's asleep. I know, baby, Dana whispered. But it's really important. Can you wake him up? Another pause. Then the final blow. Grandpa says you don't get to talk anymore. Dana sat up straight, the phone pressed against her ear like it might disappear if she didn't grip it tight enough. What? That's what he told me. If you call, I'm supposed to say that you don't get to talk anymore. Silence on both ends. Dana opened her mouth, then closed it. Evan's voice was quiet but firm. Okay, I have to go now. We're going fishing tomorrow. Click. The line went dead. Dana stayed frozen, the phone still to her ear, listening to nothing. Not even the beep of a disconnect. Just blank air. She stared at the wall across from the bed. The pale blue one she'd painted herself. The one that used to be covered in framed family photos. There were still outlines from where they had once hung. Now just clean rectangles surrounded by fading. She looked down at the phone in her hand. Evan's voice echoed in her skull like a soft bell ringing at the end of a shift. You don't get to talk anymore. Not because of hate. Not because of punishment. But because she was no longer included in the life that Liam had rebuilt. The one she thought she'd be invited back into once she finished rediscovering herself. She thought silence meant he was waiting. Instead, silence had been his response all along. His boundary. His peace. Dana stood slowly, walked to the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of water. She stared at the sink for a long time, trying to remember the last time someone in that house said her name without obligation. She couldn't. Upstairs, the guest room was still made up, the way it always had been for Evan's visits. The dinosaur sheets. The flashlight on the nightstand. The pillow she used to spray with lavender. She stepped inside and sat on the edge of the bed. It was quiet. She imagined Liam tucking Evan in, reading the same bedtime story, the same fishing plans in the morning, just as they'd always done. But now it was theirs alone. She wasn't part of it. Not anymore. The story had moved on. And her role, once central, was now written out completely. No ceremony. No farewell. Just an empty phone line and a child's voice, softly delivering the truth. She hadn't been abandoned. She'd been extracted. Surgically. Permanently. And no one was coming back. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and share your opinion about this story in the comments.